Welcome everybody to our January DataHub Town Hall. We're happy to see everybody here. Let me share my screen and we will get on into it. For those of you, if I've not met you, I'm Maggie. I'm the Community Product Manager for DataHub. We've probably seen each other in Slack. All right, off we go. So welcome to January. It's been about 5 weeks since our last one. We had an earlier town hall in December, so a ton of really great stuff for us to go through. As always, we'll do our community and roadmap updates, project updates. And then today we have a case study from Eric from Stash. We'll do a demo of some upcoming work around data domains and data containers. Tamás and I will give a rundown of the basics of data profiling and usage stats. We'll have a demo of Spark Lineage, and maybe for once we'll finish early enough for questions and answers. No promises though. So let's dig into our community updates. We have, as of this morning, 2,220 people in our Slack community. We're seeing between 60 to 85 folks joining every week. So we're real, like our community is growing much more rapidly. It's super exciting to see. As a reminder, we have our office hours on Tuesdays. It's really just a half hour for you all to come in and ask any questions that might be on your mind for some live support. We also love collaboration. So if you're looking for contribution opportunities, or if you want to show off anything you've been working on, jump into those channels. And then we announced this last month, but we're really starting to see these pick up. We have two new channels for advice around data governance and then metadata modeling. So some really cool stuff happening there. And you guys know me, I'm all about teamwork. So let's keep that going. And then Shirshanka and I, yes, we still are presenting at Data Council. It was meant to be yesterday and today. COVID had other ideas for us, so that will now be in March. If you're in the Austin area or if you're coming to the Data Council conference, let me know and love to meet up with you. So let's do some quick community shout outs. We have 3 new organizations that have officially adopted DataHub. So super exciting to see folks from Stash, Moloko, and Optum all really driving that adoption. As you may know, I reach out to every single person that joins our Slack community, asking them what brought them there, what they're kind of looking to do within the community. And it's really, I continue to hear again and again and again that folks are seeing that companies in their similar industry or their growth stage have adopted DataHub. So just by us as a community really showing like who's within the community, it's really driving growth in a lot of really great ways. So shout out to these folks, really grateful for all of your hard work and partnership. And if your organization has adopted DataHub and we are not featuring your logo on our project site, reach out to me. Let's get that going. And then other shout out, this is a new one. So in our advice data governance channel, we're seeing some really awesome conversations around governance best practices or useful resources. So shout out to these folks who are driving truly a different kind of conversation in our community. It's really exciting to see that DataHub is not just a Slack instance for folks to come and troubleshoot, but also to kind of talk about how do we do data governance these days and how are we successful with that. Another thing is that this is a big shout out to Danny Lee. So Danny shared this tweet thread from a woman named Shreya around different ways to contribute to OSS. And I could not have said this better myself with Shreya's threads. So if you are excited about DataHub, but maybe you don't have the bandwidth to contribute to code, or you just want to find new ways to contribute, there are tons of ways that you can help out. So anything from technical writing to translation to advocacy and education. I would love to hear thoughts from folks. I'm always eager to help others help us. So please feel free to reach out if you're looking for ways to contribute that's not just contributing code, even though that is also a great way to contribute. And then Danny went out and did just that, right? So he shared this in our community where he I think just kind of for fun, put together a flow of our auth, of DataHub auth. And when I saw it, I realized two things. One, I did not realize how complicated our auth was. But two, I realized, wow, this is a great reminder of how impactful it is to present information in a variety of ways, not just technical docs, but diagrams, color coding, plain language information. So Danny, thank you for that great contribution. All right, moving over to project updates. It's been a little over a month since we last covered this. So in that time, we've had 5 different releases. We've had 110 commits, so continuing on with our 100 commit per month rate. We have 34 contributors from about 19, just shy of 20 companies, and then a ton of first-time contributors. So shout out to these folks from the community that have contributed, and then anyone that's in bold, it was their first time contributing. So we're still seeing, a ton of great momentum in getting new folks within the project. And then just some kind of high level things. Shirshanka is going to go into more detail, but just a heads up, we do have the Tableau connector coming soon. We have that in PR or in review right now. We have Elasticsearch as a new metadata source, as well as data lake files. There's a new Java emitter. So for folks who are looking for ways to emit metadata, maybe not through Python, we now have our Java emitter. And then super exciting, last town hall, John demoed our UI-based ingestion. This is now available in Quick Start. So for folks that want to ingest metadata via the UI, give it a whirl. We're super excited to hear your feedback. And then just some general improvements around nested schemas, UI readability, and data profiling performance. Last but not least for me, our roadmap check-in. If you have not seen it yet, we have our Q1 roadmap at this website down here. And this is where we're going to be publicly sharing, what's on our backlog, or what's planned for the quarter, what's in progress, and then what's completed. So if you click into any of these, you'll get a better understanding of what the scope is, what's not in scope, what are stretch goals for the quarter. But we're really just trying to drive transparency in what we're working on, and how that actually ties back to community requests. So you'll notice that this is in our same feature request portal. So that's it for me. Shirshanka, let's go over to some other project updates.
Right. So maybe Maggie, just the previous slide. If you notice, some of the things that we are planning to do that are in progress includes obviously work on impact analysis. So that's work that's coming very soon to the front end, as well as improvements in the back end. Column level lineage, we're feeling pretty good about the models, and we're going to release that soon. And data containers and domains, we're going to share that later today. But data quality checks, that's been something that we've been working on. And so happy to announce that the models are looking really good. So if you move to the next slide, we went back and forth on this a little bit, but here's what we finally think is going to keep us in the best position for the future. Assertions are going to become a top level entity, and they will have, types associated with them. So you could have a dataset level assertion, a column level assertion, and in the future, even cross dataset assertions. Obviously, that means they have one-to-end relationships to either datasets or to fields within the datasets. And then they can have multiple types like range constraints, min-max constraints, custom queries, things like that. And then when these assertions run, you actually get time series metadata. So you get assertion results that actually link the assertion to the data set or the partition of the data set on which it ran. We're going to roll out integration with Great Expectations first, and then we'll probably do a DBT test. That's another common thing that people in the community use. This should be landing next week. I'm super excited. It's already looking pretty good internally, but we're going to bring it out early next week. So very excited about this being so close to done.
Yeah, and one thing on the Great Expectations side, we are actively partnering with the Great Expectations community. and are super excited about getting some really strong feedback from folks that are in the DataHub community that are using Great Expectations, and then folks that are in the Great Expectations community that can start using DataHub. So if you are using Great Expectations and want to help us kind of stress test this a little bit, please reach out.
And one more caveat, we're going to first roll out model plus integration plus API, and then fast follow with the changes in the UI to actually see the results. Cool. All right, so the other thing that has been baking are platform instances, and I'm sure you've kind of run into this issue as you've started to use DataHub more and more in your companies, that the way we've modeled the dataset identifier, or the EARN as we call it, is a little bit restrictive because it only talks about platforms and then names within the platforms and then a fabric. So for example, if you have two Redshifts that you're connecting to, or usually it's more like two Postgres's or two MySQLs that we see in the community, then you're out of luck, because when you try to connect both these two ingestion recipes to your two different databases, the EARNs look the same. And so you can get conflicts in the identifiers. So happy to announce that we are about to release, the code is already in, so it's going to be in the next release, a solution for this that does not require you to upgrade your DataHub instance, which was one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we were backwards compatible with previously released DataHub versions as well. So next slide. What we're doing with platform instances is allowing another optional field to drop into the EARN as an opt-in feature. So for example, if you've got two ingestion recipes, now a lot of the SQL sources already have support once we cut the PyPy release for this additional configuration called platform instance. So all you have to do in your ingestion recipe is drop in the platform instance that you would like it to be called. So you could pick a name, an ID like marketing, or an ID like finance. It's important to think of these as IDs because they're actually stable. They need to be stable over time. And what happens on the EARN is that the platform instance shows up as part of the name. So that was kind of our way to not break previously generated EARN styles and not to kind of force you to redo the world just because we rolled out support for platform instances. So moving on, as you can see in this case, the EARN will have a finance marker and a marketing marker. And so you can now distinguish between the two IDs. What does this mean for you? It's rolling out in the next release, which will likely be 0.824.1 PyPy, or it could even be 0.825.0, depending on when the server release goes out. If you go and check the source pages, you'll be able to see if your connector supports it. We've got a little handy logo there to show you if it's platform instance capable or not. So all you need to do is configure the platform instance in your recipe and run it. And importantly, datasets are not isolated instances. They are actually connected to by other things, for example, charts or dashboards or pipelines. And so you actually will have to change those other recipes as well to teach them about this new platform instance that you just created. So to help with that, we've also added support for migrations in the DataHub CLI. So what you would have to do if you have previously generated entities is run the migration command. This is what it looks like: DataHub migrate, data platform to instance, the platform that you're migrating, and the instance that you're migrating the entity to. The nice thing about this script is that first, it'll migrate all your old metadata from the old entities to the new entities. So this includes documentation, tags, glossary terms, all of the good stuff that you've added. It also fixes up relationships from other entities to these new entities. So if you had relationships from the old going into the old entities, you'll see those relationships get migrated over to the new entities. And then optionally, depending on what configurations you put in, it'll either hard delete the old entities or soft delete or even keep them. So you can kind of play around with it, feel good about it before you finally say bye-bye to the old entities. So that's rolling out and it's already in the code base, and we should be cutting a release early Monday, and you should be able to start using it. Next slide. If we are feeling brave enough, I can do a quick demo. What do you think, Maggie? Do we have time for it?
How quick are we talking?
2 minutes.
Uh-huh. All right, let's give it a try.
Hold them to that. Start the timer.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Okay. So we can see my screen here. This is my local data hub. It's got, I ingested Snowflake earlier today, usual non-instance Snowflake. So, you've got the top level Snowflake, and then demo pipeline is the DB name. Within that is the schema name public, and then a bunch of entities. I went in and actually wrote descriptions for one of these entities, the famous earn field, right? Added it. All my consumers should be able to see this documentation now. Also added a tag over here. But then I realized I've got multiple Snowflake instances, and I would rather call this Snowflake instance something else. So what I do is go into my Snowflake YAML, add in a platform instance. I want to call this snow_warehouse, and then I run DataHub ingest. By the way, I did try this out on the UI-based ingestion framework, and I have to say it's really slick. Great job, John. It looks amazing. But in this particular case, since I'm going to be doing a lot of changes quickly, and I want to show you what's going on, opting for the old school terminal. All right, let's see what happened. So now we go into Snowflake, and there's actually Snow Warehouse and the old demo pipeline. So we've got the new entities that we just ingested. And so if I walk down the Snow Warehouse line, I see, the public and then the all entities thing. But oh, sad, I don't have my earn in there, my beautiful description, I lost it. And the tags are also gone. So thankfully, we have the migration script, which I can now run. DataHub migrate data platform to instance platform Snowflake instance Snow Warehouse. There we go. I'm being brave, not doing any dry runs. It's giving me some helpful hints like, hey, these are the earns I'm going to be migrating over, and they're going to look like these. And that looks about right. So I'm going to say, yes, please do this. As you can see, it's soft deleting these old earns. There's also a hard delete option if you're feeling exceptionally brave. I would recommend against that until you're really feeling good about this. Now let's go back, see what happened. All right, at the top level, I no longer have that confusing old entity. Everything has been migrated over to the Snow Warehouse instance. And as I go in, look, my all entities thing has my description over here, and the tags have migrated over cleanly as well. If we had lineage to other charts and stuff, that would have migrated over as well. So really glad that this is out there. It's a big bear off our back. Platform instances has been something that people have asked for multiple times. And so you can now connect to all your MySQL instances, not just one. All right, back to you, Maggie.
All right. So I think, Shirshanka, do you want to talk about the next steps really quick, and then we'll go,
Yes.
we'll cut over to community?
Yep.
Cool. Sorry, one second.
All right. So the future for platform instances is to really think of the platform as a container, as a type of a system, and then instances show up as entities within that platform. So a data platform instance will actually get its own earn. In fact, if you look carefully at the kind of metadata events we are generating under the covers, they actually include a data platform instance aspect that is attached to a data set. And a table or a data set or a logical data set can either attach to a platform, so it's kind of like fuzzy, it's generic, it's top level, or it can directly attach to a platform instance. And we're leaving it open for now because we do acknowledge that there are certain kinds of data sets that are going to be always logical. And there'll be certain kinds of data sets that are going to be very specific and attached to a physical instance. So you want to leave that flexibility in the model. So what you'll see coming out is source connector coverage. So as you'll see the connectors kind of getting that platform instance stamp on them, enabled stamp on them over the next week or so. You'll start seeing platform instance filters showing up on the left side of the rail, like where you get that facet to select on platform. You'll also see platform instance show up. And then you'll see the urns starting to move towards GUID style urns. So we want to make them less verbose in how they look and also give them a little more flexibility so we can do these kind of changes in the future without kind of breaking the world. So that's the future. And over to the featured Stash talk.
Yeah, awesome. So we're gonna cut over to Eric. Eric's joining us from Stash and has some insight into what it's like to contribute to the DataHub community.
Thanks, Maggie. Can everyone see my screen?
We sure can.
Awesome. Put in slideshow mode. There we go. So thank you guys for having me on today. I was asked to kind of recently, Stash, we added some dataset transformers up to the upstream repository, and we were asked if we would like to kind of explain why we did that, what was the use case for it, and then explain our experience, because this was also our first time contributing up to an open source project. So how easy was it? Were there any snags or anything like that? And spoiler alert, it was pretty easy. There we go. Wait a second. There we go. So a little bit of background. My name's Eric. Obviously, I'm joining you guys from Austin, Texas. I've been a data engineer at Stash for 2 years. And Stash is an industry-leading subscription platform empowering everyday Americans to build wealth. As you may know, middle-class Americans are struggling to build wealth. The US stock market is the largest generator of wealth in our history, and yet 45% of Americans aren't currently invested. Majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Stash is a personalized financial platform with tools for investing, banking, insurance, and more that helps people grow their wealth for the long term. More on that after our presentation. So this journey was back last year in Q2. Our team was really looking at what was out there in the data catalog offerings, just both from a paid vendor standpoint and as also from the open source community. And like many of y'all, we ended up choosing DataHub because we really fell in love with the product. I mean, it was one of the only ones that really matched our technology footprint, and just the openness of the platform meant it could grow as we grew. Some of the cool features like data lineage, the business glossary, stuff like that were really appealing to us. And as we knew we wanted something with strong support, this open source community seemed really active, really strong. And as we will learn, it was that's a huge benefit for us, and probably for a lot of others as well. In Q3, we started using this tool internally and started onboarding some of our business teams on it, trying to kind of capture their knowledge, capture what they know, working with their SMEs and analysts. We identified kind of like low-hanging fruit kind of things to add to DataHub to make sure that the user experience out of the box was going to be really strong. So, you know, on top of just the metadata that comes from the various platforms that we're ingesting, we wanted to get, you know, like Confluence links and create some tags, add to the business glossary, really help the first users get familiar with the platform and have, you know, that wealth of data right there at their fingertips. But the big question was, how do you add these into DataHub efficiently, right? We knew we would, just from these meetings with the business teams, we would have like, you know, okay, these data sets need these terms and these tags and these links and stuff like that. But there wasn't really a way to get out of the box to get that information into DataHub. There's the GraphQL API, which kind of was the obvious solution. We'll just read it in, send it up, blah, 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 blah. It works. But reading into kind of the source code, we identified that, hey, there's dataset transformers out there that already modify the dataset entities. what if we can just use those ourselves to add like tags or business glossary terms? So that's kind of talking with the project management. We had some leeway to explore that. We had the fallback option of the GraphQL API, and we had the flexibility to see if, you know, we could learn something from this, learn not only like open source community stuff like that, but actually just the inner workings of DataHub itself. So we used this dataset transformer that was already available, this pattern add dataset ownership, and the config is on the screen right here. Basically what this does is in the rules section, there's a regex pattern and then an array of URNs. And the dataset transformer is just going to apply all of those URNs in the array to whatever is in the regex pattern. So we're like, yeah, this should be pretty straightforward to copy over for glossary terms and tags and stuff like that. So it turns out it was pretty straightforward. If you're not familiar with how this works, this is a very, very quick overview because, you know, don't want to waste too much time here. But when the pipeline runs, right before it writes every record to whatever sync is defined, it passes it to this transform function. And the transform function just says, if there's a transformer, transform the record. And it does it on the right side of the screen using this method called transform1, which you can see takes in a metadata change event and outputs a metadata change event. So that's what we'll be extending. And as an example of this, here's what we did for the dataset terms. And you can see that on the left side of the screen, the dataset terms just extends that dataset transformer. And most importantly, that transform1 method actually does something now. It doesn't just pass. And we use the MCE builder to add a glossary term to this, to the MCE, and then pass it back. So that was already implemented by that pattern add ownership class. So we literally was just like copy paste. That's how straightforward and easy it was. And then on the right side of the screen is kind of the magic that makes this pattern add dataset transformer work. There is already this config model that takes in the regex patterns and parses it through. So we really just copied that implementation and then used it. And that's kind of the crux of this all. You know, this was our first time contributing, so it wasn't, we didn't go for, you know, this huge feature or anything. We just thought, hey, we have this problem, maybe some others have the same problem, let's explore it and contribute it back up. You know, if the community doesn't like it, they'll always just pass on it, right? So the risk was really low. We had the flexibility from the project management. And most importantly, I think we had the community to kind of back us up. Reading through the Slack channels, reading through the GitHub, that was pretty invaluable to our experience. Just like, oh, we see people are having this problem setting up, you know, the dev environment, blah, 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 blah. It's really easy to fix. So with the documentation, everything set up, testing, all that, the contributing experience was pretty straightforward, really easy. I think we had like a few comments from Shirshanka and the team, but honestly, it was really straightforward. And I really can't stress how invaluable that Slack communication was, you know, using that search function, a lot of good information's on the community already. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the DataHub team, Maggie, Shirshanka, John, Gabe, all of your time, all of the help and guidance you guys have given us, all of the contributors. Without you guys, obviously, we probably wouldn't have gotten as far as we did, even with an addition as simple as that. And thank you all to the Stash team for all your support. And if you're interested in joining our team, there's a link on your screen right there, stash.com/about/careers. We're growing. And if our mission sounds like something you'd love to help build out, please reach out to me either on the Slack or on LinkedIn. I mean, if you have questions about the DataHub transformers as well, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm always around. Thanks again for having me, guys. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. And Eric, don't forget to post that career link in the jobs channel as well, so we can get more eyes on it.
Will do. Thanks.
All right, Mr. John, you are up.
Awesome. Do you mind if I share screen here, Maggie?
I do not mind one bit.
Okay, hopefully my audio will be sharing as well, because I'm going to be showing some videos. So I'm just going to go with it. If my audio is not working, someone interrupt me, please. Okay, so thank you, Eric. First of all, that was a really great presentation, and we love having community members that are so passionate about the project and community. That was really cool to see the contribution. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to use those transformers. So I'm going to talk about two new features on DataHub that we've been working on the past few weeks. Let me just start this up. Domains and containers. And if you've been following the feature request closely, you'll see that this is an item that's been on our roadmap for a little while now, based on some feedback we've gotten directly from the community about wanting to model these two concepts, similar but unique concepts. And so what I'm going to do is walk through kind of the overview of both of those features individually, starting with domains. So I'm going to start by talking about what domains are on DataHub now. Domains are basically a collection of data assets that is sort of logical in nature. You can think of it as a top-level folder or a curated folder of related assets that can be managed on DataHub as opposed to managed on some external platform. It's also managed sort of centrally, managed and governed centrally, or can be distributed to owners of a particular domain, which are two key requirements we heard from the community. Now, just talking about this, I know a lot of you are probably already gonna be like, what the heck is this? Like, what are, I don't even know what tags and terms, the differences between those two are. Like, now we're adding something new. So I'm gonna just quickly talk about the difference between tags, terms, and the new concept of domains, at least how we think about them. So in our perspective, tags are sort of informal, loosely controlled pieces of metadata that you can attach to assets. You can attach multiple of them to an asset, and there's not really any central management or curation today. Glossary terms are more like a controlled vocabulary with the option to add some hierarchy to a graph structure between them. Typically, we've seen this used to kind of standardize the types of leaf level attributes like fields in a schema, say to define, the email ID, the standard concepts that your business cares about, and then associate that standard controlled vocabulary with real columns in the wild that you've ingested into DataHub. And domains are really these top level categories, maybe finance, marketing, that align with the nature of your business. There's central management, and for now, there's a single domain per asset limit. So one asset can be in one domain. And soon enough, we intend to add support for sort of managing access management for metadata via domains as well. So they're kind of a way to govern metadata management. So now I'm going to jump into a demo of the domains feature in the UI. I'm going to be lazy about it today because I have two different branches going for these features and just share a loom. So again, if you guys can't hear my audio, let me know and I can try to figure it out. I'm just going to start by going and clicking on that. And this is basically a place where you can manage the domains on DataHub, which again are just sort of logical collections of assets. They can span across different entity types, but they're managed centrally here on DataHub. And you can see we've already created a few domains, one maybe for our sales, assets, marketing, and maybe data platform engineering. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new domain just to show you the process. Let's say that we have, a product engineering team that we'd like to associate some assets with at the top level. Engineering teams domain. We can go ahead and create that. Should show up here in a second. And then what we can do is actually start to associate that domain with entities. So we can actually add entities to the domain. And so maybe we will go ahead and add user creations to this domain. So we'll come in here and you can see that in addition to all the existing metadata about an asset, we've added a new domain section here on the right. And we can come into here and actually just search product engineering, add it, set that domain. And now what that means is we can actually filter by the new domain and see that we have just one asset in there, user creations. And you can see this is actually represented as a new tag, which takes precedence over the existing tags and terms. So if you have multiple, this will take that precedence. But you can also click into a domain and search a domain, in fact, as well. And that'll take you to the domain's sort of entity page, where you can do things like see all of the assets that are actually inside of that domain. And so currently we only have one asset, so we can only see that airflow task. But you can imagine a domain may have hundreds or thousands of assets, and this allows you to browse and filter down using this filter slide out to see exactly what's inside of the domain. So for example, you can say user, filter it down by text, or you can filter it down by these faceted filters, much in the same way you would search. You can also edit documentation for a domain. You can see that it inherited that documentation we had created initially. We can add owners, we can add links, etc. So pretty much everything you can do with a normal entity, you can actually do with a domain as well. Now I'm just going to quickly cover the policies part of this. So there's a new platform privilege that we've added called, I believe, manage domains, which will allow you to view this domains tab, list all of those domains, create domains, etc. But in addition to that, there's a new metadata policy as well, which allows you to assign a domain to an asset, or basically put an asset into a domain, and that is going to be called edit domain here. So that's how the privileges will work, pretty much the same way that tags, terms are managed, with the one addition that there's sort of centralized management control for domains themselves. Final thing I'll show you is that on the home page, we have a new sort of set of recommendations here around domains, where you can actually see the assets inside of a domain pretty easily as a kind of a launch point for this. All right, that's pretty much it. I'm going to keep things moving here. So that's domains in a nutshell, what will be available in the first release, at least. So coming in 8.2.5 will be the ability to create domains via the UI, edit their descriptions and owners, browse assets inside of the domains, attach them via the UI, as well as attaching them at ingestion time. So you'll actually be able to take a reference to that domain earn or ID and place it in your ingestion recipe so that every asset from that ingestion source is automatically placed into that domain. Searching and filtering by domain, and finally, homepage domain recommendations as well. On the horizon, I think, is a few interesting things we'd like to add. Bulk adding domains via the UI, so being able to go to the domain profile page and actually just search and select a large group of assets to add all in one go, as opposed to going and finding the asset and then adding it to the domain. Second thing is domain-based metadata policies. So this is something we've heard directly from the community, is that you'd like to be able to sort of manage those policies or kind of set predicates for those policies based on domains. And then finally, we've heard a couple of use cases for nested domains or hierarchical domains, but we're not sure if this will be on the roadmap. So waiting to get some more signal on that one. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through asset containers as well. I think you'll see that there's a lot of synergy between these two concepts. There's a lot of reuse between them, which is why we're doing them together. But basically, a container is a general purpose entity on DataHub that represents kind of a physical collection of data assets, as opposed to a logical collection in the domains case. And this physical collection typically will come directly from that third-party source, like Snowflake, MySQL, BigQuery, and is, the common ones you would think of are databases, schemas, maybe projects in the case of BigQuery. Yeah, so that's pretty much the examples here. And just a quick overview of containers versus domains. Again, containers are going to be those physical collections. They're also going to be immutable once you've ingested them onto DataHub. So you can't kind of freely add or remove entities from a domain. It's kind of taken as part of that asset's entity or identity, rather, the domain that it's a part of, or the container that it's a part of, rather. And then domains are logical collections curated on DataHub. So the source of truth is DataHub. All right, one more quick demo. Let's demo the new containers feature, which will be available in version 0.8.25 of DataHub. So containers are collections of data assets that are ingested from a third-party system like Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, Postgres, and more. Some common containers you would think about are databases, schemas, projects in BigQuery. Currently on DataHub, we only ingest leaf level nodes, so things like datasets, tables, etc. And so the goal of this project is to really bring in those containers as first-class citizens on the DataHub metadata graph. So what I'm going to show you is what it would look like to ingest containers from MySQL. And I'm going to start by just searching MySQL. And if we scroll down a bit, you'll notice that for this DataHub metadata aspect table that lives in MySQL, there's a new piece of information that appears in the preview here. And that is a reference to the kind of container in which this table lives. In this case, metadata aspect table lives in a schema called DataHub schema. If you scroll down a bit more, you'll see that the schema is actually appearing in the search results as a separate node in itself. And it actually has a parent container as well. We can also see that it has 3 entities inside of it, so 3 tables inside of it probably. We can go ahead and click into that, and you'll notice that what you get is a profile page very similar to dataset pages, where you can do things like editing documentation, viewing properties, adding links, tags, terms, and owners, even the new domains concept as well. You can also easily view all of the entities that are inside of this container, in this case, inside of this schema. You can also slide out this filters bar to slice and dice the list by some secondary filters, or you can just use a free text search to search down the entities. I think this is very, very handy, especially in the case where you have a large number of entities inside of a container. And what you can do from this page is navigate both down to the children, so using this search, but you can also navigate up to the parent. And so if you see at the schema level, we're actually inside of another container, which is called DataHub DB, which exists in my MySQL instance. So if I click on that, you'll see that this also gets its own page, will appear in the search results as a separate node, etc. And so this just makes things a little bit better because you can add that additional context, that additional metadata at that parent level. You can also easily see how data is organized physically in these external systems via DataHub. So the last thing I'll show is just filtering by container. You'll notice if you scroll down on the left here that there's a new container filter. And this allows you to easily search for those assets that are inside of a particular container. Of course, you can combine search filters as you normally would to whittle it down even more. So this is basically the first version of the containers feature. All right, back to the slides here. Okay, so availability for the containers feature in 0.8.2.5 will be support for ingesting containers like schemas and databases and projects from BigQuery as well from all of the SQL sources. So Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, Postgres, MySQL, MSSQL, etc. Searching for filtering by container as demoed, browsing assets inside the container, adding metadata to a container. On the horizon for this feature is kind of based on the feedback we get from the community, support for additional sources and container types. So now that we have that general purpose model, we can actually go through the other connectors that weren't listed and try to add them in as necessary as well. For things like Glue, S3, MongoDB is another obvious one we want to get to. Container-based metadata policies. So this is another direct piece of feedback we've received, is that folks want to manage metadata policies via container as well as domain. And I think that's pretty much it. Let me know if you guys have feedback. I'm really excited to get these out to the community. 0.8.2.5 will be released next Friday, so a week from today, at which point you should be able to start using these. That being said, domains is already on head. So Quick Start will already have the domains feature. Containers is following shortly behind. All right, back to you, Maggie.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Okay, now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk the basics. So one of my personal favorite features within DataHub is our ability to quickly view kind of the profile of a data set, the kind of shape of the data, to really kind of minimize the amount of ad hoc discovery you need to do within it. You can just kind of get a glance at what that data looks like. So Tamás and I are going to give you a rundown of all things data profiling and usage stats within DataHub. So let's just start with the basics. Why do we care about data profiling? So I think the main driver here is answering questions around, can I trust this data set? Is it fresh? How large is it? Are there dupes I need to worry about? Are there null values I need to worry about? What's actually meaningful about this? So what character column is going to be a unique identifier versus a categorical variable that I can kind of pivot the data around? How has this data changed over time? Is it consistent? Are there time series issues I need to think about? And a lot of these can be answered just looking at the stats page in a dataset entity in DataHub. So what you'll see here is a sample data set, and in our stats tab, you'll see a quick kind of like high level view of all stats related to this table. So I can start to answer by looking at the latest stats or historical stats. What does this data look like now versus sometime in the past? So has it evolved over time? How large is this data set? Am I dealing with a ton of records that I'm going to need to think about kind of like query performance or kind of processing time, or is it small and I can just kind of zoom right through it? How up to date is this data? When's the last time that it changed? When's the last time that it was updated? Just to give me a sense of kind of data freshness there. The kind of like zooming in on the output, we can start to look at column level stats. So answering questions around data quality issues. So if we see like with this location description column, we see that there's about 8,700 null values within this data set. Now the data practitioner can look at that and say like, oh no, that's untrustworthy. But then in the grand scheme of things, since there's 7.5 million records, it's less than, or it's like 0.1% of the data set. Maybe it's not something I need to worry about. I can start to look at what date ranges are represented within the data set. So this is looking at records from early 2001 all the way to the end of 2021. So to give me a sense of just what's the breadth of history included here. I can start to understand, are there duplicates? So looking at our unique key, I see that this is 100% distinct. So great, it is unique. I don't need to worry about dupes there. Thinking about, kind of like feature categories or reporting categories, what categories are actually meaningful? So if I look at within a data set of 7.5 million and there's 61,000 categories of block, that tells me that that's, pretty high cardinality and something that, maybe would be useful for reporting or modeling around. The other thing is we see sample values, so you can get a sense of what data is actually in here, right? So if like maybe you just see a column called block, what does that even mean? Oh, now I see that this is, an actual like physical street block within the city, or this is, kind of like the types of categories that are going to be measured here. One thing to note with this, this is all configurable. So some folks are worried about actually displaying this information to the well, some teams are worried about accidentally displaying the wrong information. So you can configure each of these to actually show the sample values or not. It's up to your discretion there. And then on the other side of things, we think about usage stats. So this starts to answer questions around how is this data generally used? What columns are most important? Even if the table has been updated recently, are people actually querying it? Like, is it something that is used within my community of data practitioners in my company? And then questions around, who's using this, so I can go ask them questions about how to interpret the output of it. So kind of going back to our schema tab here with the same data set, we have this idea of query usage at the column level. This isn't supported for all of our SQL all of our SQL stores, but where this is available, we do surface it. So you can get a sense of, kind of the relative popularity of a given data set. You can also see the top users of it. So who's querying it the most, and maybe folks that you can go ask questions to. And also, oops, oh yeah, sorry. Then we start to look at actual sample queries. So on our queries tab, this is where we start to surface the most popular queries over a period of time. So you can start to kind of understand what are kind of like the most common calculations, and also what are things that have already been calculated, so you don't have to kind of like recreate the wheel. You don't have to recreate that or rewrite that query from scratch every single time. And then also just a sense of how often this data is queried within your organization. So with all of those use cases in mind, I'm actually going to pass this over to Tamás so we can see how this is configured, how it's ingested, and how you can get it up and running within your stack.
Yes, hi. So there was a question when it's available. Actually, there is a good news, it's available. And now I'm going to show you how you can set it up. So it's super easy. It's currently available for all the SQL sources, and we are using Great Expectation under the hood. But let's go into the details. So basically, just to enabling it, it's super easy. You don't have to do much, just entering the profiling enabled and set it true. And then if you just go and run your recipe, then profiling should happen automatically. But one thing you should know actually about that, profiling is not for free. So actually profiling time can really it can be affected by how many tables do you have, how many columns you have in a table, and how many rows you have in a table. So most probably because of that, you might need to tweak a bit your profiling configuration, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. If I can click my other, okay, sorry. Previously I showed you these two lines. Now you can add even more lines just to disable or enable all these profiling, and when I'm going through all of those, you will see what kind of profilers we have. And basically we have all the options, so you can really, it's up to you what you want to turn on and off. It's totally on you. So for numerical values, for all of the columns, we calculate null count, and you can enable with an include field null count, set it true or false. For all the numeric columns, we calculate minimum value, maximum value, mean value, median value. For integer fields, we also generate standard deviation if it's needed for you. And also for like timestamp fields, we calculate as well minimum and maximum value. So, and here you can see, I think it's quite straightforward how you can enable and disable those. There is an option as well, like include field quantize. So if you enable that for numeric fields, we calculate the 5th, the 25, the 50, 75, and the 95 percentiles. Currently, actually, it's disabled by default because it's not shown in the UI. But if you want and enable that for the backend, we are storing this information and calculate that. But this is not visible on the UI currently. There is the distinct value frequencies. This calculated for low cardinality numeric fields. Sorry, low cardinality fields actually. And this as well not shown on the UI currently, so this is disabled by default. And the field histogram, where for numeric fields it can generate automatically a histogram for you. This as well not shown currently on the UI, so it's disabled. The field sample values, this is what you could see. So like Maggie's screenshot where you had these sample values. This is the one where you can control if you want to enable or disable that. And these are about the profilers. We also, just to make sure that these profiling queries run effectively and fast enough, we introduced this query combiner, which basically try to make sure that all these profiling queries run in a optimal batches and not doing too many round trip towards the your data warehouse. And this by default it's enabled. If you want to disable because you see some issue or anything, you still can enable or disable that. You also have control to say how many columns in a table you want to profile with the max number of fields to profile. If by default it's unlimited, but of course you can change it to 10 and then only 10 columns will be profiled. If you don't want column level profiles, then you can just enable a profile table levels only. So you will only see the counts of the table, but you won't see column level statistics. You also can set a limit, which basically add the limit to the profiling query. So if you set the limit 1000, that would mean only 1000 lines will be used for the profiling. That also means if you set it like 2000 and then you have like 2000 lines in your table, then in the end the total count will be 1000 because that was the limit for what we used. Offset is basically just add the SQL offset. So basically it's not start from that offset, it starts the profiling. But if you don't want to mess all of these, but you feel that, hey, my profiling is slow, we have a nice option, this turn off expensive profiling metrics, which you can turn on, and then it will turn off the expensive profilers and also set the max number of fields to profile to 10. But maybe you know that you have some tables what you want to add for profiling, or you want to do profiling multiple batches and you want to filter down for one profiling run to run only one schema. You can do that. So you can define profile pattern, and then profilers will only run on those tables which matches this pattern. One thing you should know that these profilers running on the whole table, which means if you have like a huge clickstream data on Hive with multiple partitions, then you should think twice if you really want to do profiling on the top of that. In the future, we would like to support these partition tables, but now you should know about this limitation. And if everything went well, then I think the profiling finished, as you can see. And now if I go to DataHub page, I should have my table and all the stats should be here. But one thing you can see here, like the usage one, and you might ask, okay, but how I can enable the usage statistics? That's one thing what I think sometimes people get confused. So there you need a different recipe and a different source, which are the usage sources. Currently, we support usage for Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake, and Starburst Reno. And if you want to enable, it's super easy to do. It's basically you just install your source. So like in this case, you need to install the BigQuery usage source. And then basically, if you don't set anything, then it will get the usage for the previous day. If you want, you can set a start and an end time. Especially, I think it can be quite useful if you want to bootstrap your data. So you want to run in multiple days, and after that, you just only want to run like incrementally always for the previous day. You can set a start time and an end time, and also you can set a top n queries, which says for that table, how many queries we are going to, the top n queries, what we are going to store with every table. And if I can quit my editor. Sorry. Never mind, I will do it here. Okay. So then I just need to run the ingest same way in a normal way, and then it should collect all the usage set for that table. And one thing you should note that it's you should know that for every platform, I think there is some kind of retention period for these usage information. So it can happen like if you are on Redshift, you want to get usage set, but you can only see for the last 2 or 3 days. That's most probably because of that retention period what you have in these systems. Now, if I just hit refresh, I should be able to see all the queries here. And if I go to the schema page, I should see all this usage next to the columns based on the queries. So in high level, or not in that high level, but actually this is how you can use profiling and usage. As you can see, it's super easy to use. And we are continuously improving it. So like for profiling recently, if you use profile for a month ago and now, you might wonder how much faster it became, because now we are using like approximate queries wherever we can. We basically disabled those profilers, which currently you can see on the UI, and it made, I would say, like significant improvement for the profiling.
Awesome. All right, so folks, we are over time. However, I think we're going to move forward with our Spark Lineage demo really quick. And if folks need to drop off, absolutely fine. We always make this available on our YouTube channel. We'll be posting that in the DataHub Slack.
All right, so quick reminder of what Spark Lineage is all about. DataHub Spark Lineage is a jar. You drop it into your Spark application, and there are helpful guides for exactly how you do that. And when the Spark application runs, the jar essentially is a listener to the Spark application events, and it produces metadata events out and sends it over to the DataHub metadata service. Mugdha actually recorded a couple of nice demos for us to walk through. And it basically produces metadata for jobs, the Spark application as a pipeline, as well as the input and output data sets that the job consumed and produced. So I'll just play the notebook version, because that's, I think, pretty easy to follow through. And we're going to do the 1.5x version. Let me know if this is.
Let's see how we can use our DataHub Spark Lineage in Jupyter Notebook. Here we have a couple of imports specifically for SpicePy. And after that, when we create a Spark session using Spark session builder, we will specify master, whichever we want to, like local, or it can be a cluster setup as well. And then the app name. App name is important because the app name, whatever we specify here, will be reflected in DataHub.
Shirshanka, I think we lost the audio.
Right now it's running on my localhost, so it's localhost, but it can be on some other server as well. Then I have 2 CSVs which I have read. One CSV contains information about all the airports and where that airport is, which city and state and all that. And whereas flight CSV contains the information about when was the flight, day of the month, day of the week, carrier, what was the origin airport, and what is the destination airport ID, and whatever the delays, whichever are present, like departure delay and arrival delay. In this particular notebook, I'm going to work on departure delays, see how the departure delays are affected by the airport and the carrier together. So what I have done here, I have merged the 2 CSVs to get all the data together. After that, I have added aggregation function over the delay, mean department delay, and whatever the information which we have received, we have just written into the table. Such kind of information will be useful in further model training, where can be used for further analysis. Let's say in model training, where instead of just giving the departure airport, if we provide the average delay at that airport for the given carrier, it might be better for those models. So that's why we created this and store it into the hub in a table, which will be further utilized by our pipeline, and then just Spark stop. I'm just going to execute this notebook, okay, and then we will see that this executed notebook, we will see how it gets reflected into our data hub. So let me open our DataHub UI port, and we will quickly see how it is being executed. So right now it's executing. Now here is the pipeline. So if we go to the pipelines, we have Spark because the pipeline was executed over a Spark. Here it is whatever the master which we have. So if I have, let's say, Spark master :77, then that particular thing will pop up over here. I'll just click on local, and this is our pipeline. So this is the name of the pipeline which is getting reflected from this our app name, flight departure analysis. So let's go inside path departure analysis documentation. Here we can see when the job was started, when the job, what was the application name, who created, who has triggered the job, what was the ID of that app inside Spark context. In addition, here we will see tasks. In our notebook, we have only one task which actually writes or updates something, and everything before this is read only. So those things won't get recorded. Only thing where we are actually storing something will get recorded. So as we can see, we have a save as a table at native method. So whatever, so save method. We can here see it has a properties. In properties, we can see what was the departure, like application name, completed ad, description. Important thing is here we have a query plan, which is important, logical query plan, which is getting showed, and what was the query execution ID. So we can actually relate this query execution ID as well as the app ID to the Spark history server in case we want to link the two things together. And inside this job, there the lineage is being created. So there are two upstream lineages and one downstream, because we read from the two CSV files and we write to a data set. So if we see, this is a data set, which is a Hive data set, and before these two are the HDFS data set, because we are reading it from the HDFS and processing it. As you can see, there are different lineages. So there is no upstream, there is only one downstream, which is being created by this. So all the information related to this is present inside this, and we can see how it is.
Awesome. So let's get out of this. Cool. So back, I will post both of these videos, one that shows how to do this with the notebook and the other with kind of the Spark submit option and how to add the jars on the spark.conf. Documentation for this is also available on the website. What's coming next is Spark 3.x support, support for Databricks environments, and column level lineage. So there were a couple of questions around column level lineage as well. The models are getting released next week, and then we'll follow soon with integrations with specific sources. Spark is on that short list, so we'll start seeing column level lineage getting produced from these Spark emitters as well. All right, that's pretty much what we had to share on kind of the Spark lineage feature. And back to you, Maggie.
All righty. I think that's it, folks. If anybody has questions, you can stick around. We're glad to answer them. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining. This is the first time we hit a max in our Zoom attendees. So we learned today that we could only support 100 people, and we will make sure that doesn't happen again in the future. We will support all of the people. But thank you all so much for your time. Happy January, happy 2022. And we'll see you in Slack. If y'all have questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, goodbye, goodbye.